honoree, Rachel, will be joined by co-founder and chief strategy officer of Satva, Ricky Joshi, who's from the class of 1997. If you want to come on, Ricky. We also have the co-founder and president of Jobwell, Ryan Williams, from the class of 2008. And I have no doubt that our moderator is going to do a fantastic job because I know her well and her voice is a bit louder than mine. We also have Chelsea Clements, who is Website Performance Marketing Manager for Green Growth Brands and from the class of 2005.
Hello. Like all my time at Academy, I'm winging this tonight, so pretty excited, everyone. Okay, well, I'm super excited to moderate my first panel. I've seen a ton of these at all the conferences that we all probably have gone to, but first time moderating, so bear with me. We are going to keep questions for the end. I'm sure you'll have some because we have some very fascinating panelists tonight. But we're just going to go through and quickly introduce ourselves, give our current title, where we work, and summarize what you do in 2 sentences. If you would like to start down there.
Sure. I'll start, and I apologize in advance. My voice has been cracking when I've been in the cafeteria, which I think is just reliving my academy days. My name is Ryan Williams. I'm the class of 2008, and I'm the co-founder and president of a company called Jobwell, which is a career advancement platform for people of color, so Black, Latinx, Native American students and professionals, connecting them with job opportunities at companies that historically have struggled to access and recruit and hire diverse talent, but who understand that it can help to move their companies forward. Really excited to be here. So many familiar faces, it's exciting to see everyone.
I think you guys probably have heard enough about what I do.
Hi, Ricky Joshi, class 97, co-founder and chief strategy officer, now was chief marketing officer, kind of changed my role of Satva. We're one of the larger direct-to-consumer mattress disruptors. I don't know if anyone's really followed the mattress space. We were the first ones in it. Now it's apparently cool to run a mattress company. So I guess I'm really on something. Anyway, happy to be here as well.
I have my own microphone because I'm fancy. I'm Chelsea Clements. I have a strange title, but basically I'm e-commerce and digital strategy for a company. I think that the PR version of our description is we're a consumer lifestyle product company that supports wellness and happiness, but I work for a cannabis company. So yeah, nationwide dispensaries and online and wholesale business for both THC and CBD. So yeah, that's new. I'm getting used to my pitch for that. So something that's very interesting before we dive into the questions is our panelists come from very diverse size companies here. So I think through the lens of these questions, we're going to have some very diverse answers, and maybe we'll be able to dig into a couple specific use cases. So it'll be fun. But we'll start down with you, Ryan. But how did you get into a digital-first business, and how did Academy help you get there?
I think the digital-first piece was, as I'm sure some people in the room understand, looking around your employer and not seeing people who look like you can be a very disheartening experience. So for my co-founder and myself, we started our careers working at Goldman Sachs on the trading floor. And the trading floor of 700 people, we'd look around and we were 2 of maybe 3 or 4 Black people on the entire trading floor. And so, when the diversity recruiters would come and tap us on the shoulder and say like, hey, you guys are Black, help us find some Black people to work here. We thought it was super inefficient and awkward and just like uncomfortable that they would ask us to do this when our day jobs were to be in the markets. And so for us, digital first was the obvious solution if the alternative was shoulder taps midday to find friends. And so we decided to start a business that really sat in the middle between these historically separate communities and really disintermediate what historically had been the routes for access to employers. But I think what Academy has done, from the perspective of being an entrepreneur in a fairly early stage business, you are doing everything, wearing all hats. You are marketing, sales, finance, accounting, every element of the business. And I remember reflecting back on when I was in Academy and sort of having the classes that I really loved and it kind of took to, and wondering, why can't I just do this only? Why can't it just be like econ and math and science? But I think reflecting back, it was that more well-rounded experience, that all the different areas of sort of expertise, perspective, and knowledge that come into play when you're a founder of a company. So for me, that was a critical part of that journey.
So for me, when I was getting towards the end of college, I started to realize that marketing was actually the perfect practical application of creative ideas. And I knew there were a lot of different ways that creativity and visual arts could be done, including with Lori Clements, Chelsea's mom, who's back there and was my sponsor for my senior project here. But the thing that really spoke to me was the business side of it. And so when I first took a role at Ogilvy in New York in 2005, it was already very much a time when digital was well underway in marketing and advertising, but it wasn't so underway that our clients fully understood it or knew what to do in order to optimize their programs. So they hired us as their consultants to help explain and get them going and do different types of projects. So as a result, digital was always something that I worked on. And then as I've taken roles later on, it's just always been digital, e-commerce and marketing, content, rewards, etc. It's just the way that people want to interact with brands and the way that customers want their companies to communicate with them. So I would say it was almost a foregone conclusion to work in a digital-first business, and pretty much all businesses now do have that lens to them. In terms of how Academy helped get me into digital-first business, I would say similar to what you said. The variety of classes that I took at Academy was really important. So I loved painting and drawing and the arts, and so while I was taking difficult math and science and history and all those types of things that you would normally expect, I spent almost every day painting and taking classes with Mr. Block. And I think that's pretty unique to be able to take that much time for the arts that young in your life. And what it made me realize was that it was something I really wanted to continue doing in my professional career, is to have a job that made me close to the creative side of the business, and where I work side by side with graphic designers, UX, UI professionals, copywriters, etc. And I'm not one of them now, but I appreciate what they do, and I kind of serve as that translation person to help make sure that that is carried through to help the business deliver what we need to deliver.
Yeah, and Ricky, I'm interested to hear yours because, I don't think mattresses and digital, I feel like it's a very analog experience, so tell us your perspective.
I can tell anything. Actually, it's interesting. I think my most sort of, formative moments at Academy in terms of getting into digital were actually non-academic. I remember running for a service club in 9th grade and not getting elected, in senior year I was president. Also was really, with Mrs. Benning here, we started a Habitat for Humanity chapter and took something that was relatively dormant and made something real out of it. I think that kind of instilled a little bit of confidence that, I could go out there, surmount a challenge, lead a team, and really build something. So I failed about 10 times after that, starting in college. My first company was a digital-first business, failed. Every time I'd make money at a job, I would run out and try to do something on the side, work late, nights and weekends. Eventually did start a successful agency, which led to me trying a bunch of different things in e-commerce. Long story, but mattresses was something that I just identified as an opportunity. And that's where the academic side actually came in. I realized to really execute in this area, I needed to be Google AdWords trained and certified, so I got myself certified in AdWords. Started, working with internet marketing type clients, and then kind of jumped into this mattress thing.
Like you said, he was there before Casper and Lisa and all those other ones. So, how has the digital space changed since you first entered the workplace?
I think that, digital is so dynamic. I think what I love the most about it, is you're never ever at a place where you can really feel comfortable. It's not something that you're trained in and all of a sudden, 2 years in the future, it's going to be static and the same. Every tech company is innovating, particularly as an internet marketer. Google is constantly, adding new technology, and being sort of ahead of a lot of technology that comes out, or being able to be nimble and embrace new technologies and work through technologies and make things work, I think makes it really, really exciting for me. And I think that kind of is sort of the whole beat behind digital in many ways is, you're almost an innovator in your own right, so you're taking the best of what other people are creating, but you're sort of fitting that technology into a purpose where you can use it the best, and so I find it to be very exciting in that way.
So for me, how digital's changed, when I joined Citi, I was getting ready to start, and I spoke with the person who's going to be my manager a couple days before and saying, what do I need to know and what time, where do you want me to meet you? He said, oh yeah, by the way, something important happened today, a memo went out, we're establishing this fintech unit, and I think that we're all going to be moved into it, so probably when you show up, we already will be in the midst of a reorg. And I was like, oh, great, I don't really know what this thing is. I actually think I wrote down the wrong word and didn't even write down fintech, I misheard it. So I showed up, and what had happened was our CEO, Stephen Bird, had come out and said that he wanted Citi to be a mobile first business. And for a bank, that was pretty unheard of, because banks like our main competitors, which are Bank of America, Chase, and Wells Fargo, have hundreds of thousands of branches, not hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of branches in the United States. And it's really dominant to be able to walk into a branch and expect that you can have your needs served in that way. So to come out and say we're not going to invest in our physical footprint, and now we're only at 700 branches in the US, meant that the entire company had to reinvent itself and figure out how we were going to serve our customers and not lose them all by not having the space. So what that meant is lots of hiring and lots of activity and lots of trying to figure out what we were going to do with digital and mobile. And we got to a place where we realized our mobile experience had to be more comprehensive than pretty much every other experience. So how many features can you pack into a screen that's this big without having people not be able to find what they're trying to do and then call or get so frustrated that they're fed up? How do you kind of balance all of those things? And it was a really unique challenge to try to make it an inclusive experience. And now we're 3.5, 4 years later into that journey, and we're having the fastest year-over-year mobile growth, which is 25%. We don't have the largest mobile base because we still have more of a presence globally than in the US versus Chase, etc. But the fact that we made sort of that bold stand and then changed our business model and changed the way that we work in order to support that, I thought was really amazing time to be part of that particular company and that industry.
Yeah, and Ryan, didn't your company start something with stock photography, and this started part of a college project? Yeah, talk about that,
Sure.
how it morphed into what it is.
Absolutely, and I think it ties into the original question surrounding like the digital space changing. I think in our lens of diversity and inclusion, companies have increasingly been realizing that in order to be innovative, in order to produce products that are speaking to a changing globe, consumers, customers, etc., who are looking different, whose purchasing power is fundamentally changing, that they need to be a place of work that's compelling for that audience. And one big piece of representing a workplace or a professional environment, frankly, is stock photography. And if you've seen stock photography, it's usually white males, or perhaps there's a little bit more gender diversity than that, but it isn't representative of what the modern professional workspace looks like. So we started an effort of creating our own stock photography of a much more colorful, frankly, audience of professionals or students. And we created this library and just put it up, and had like 12 million downloads in a very short period of time. Another one that we did was with the PGA. Diversifying the game of golf was an important kind of initiative for them, which is timely given Tiger's triumph. But they were really thinking, how can we make the game itself be more representative of the country? And so we did a stock photography shoot with them to show, here are Black and Latin and Native American golfers. This sport does include you. And so I think it's just really exciting and kind of humbling to see the way that brands recognize what they're putting out there, what they're using digitally, even imagery, can really change the way the brand's perceived.
Yeah, one more thing I was just sort of thinking is, when I was talking, I think one big difference actually between now and kind of late 90s and early 2000s is there are so many tools out there that are free, that you can get for $39 a month. What used to be so impossible, I remember, I don't know if you guys remember in the late 90s, companies would raise tens of millions of dollars to just launch a website or a product. Now you can do that kind of, in 10th grade and at home on the weekends. And I think that's really sort of it could put a level playing field in many ways around disruption, and really made it a lot easier for entrepreneurs to kind of come out there and do really impressive things a lot faster. So I think the whole ecosystem is kind of building upon itself.
You really just segued into my next question very well. So with the broader landscape changing, how is this changing how you're doing business with all the change in digital?
I think that in general, AI is huge for us. So we're hyper specialized. So as I said, we use a lot of marketing technology, etc. But I think that that's definitely something that has made the way that you operate differently. Just in the last few years of doing this, we used to do things a lot more manually, and now we can kind of press buttons to take care of things that might have been just a lot more difficult, which makes us just able to do other things. So instead of spending, and paying someone to monitor individual ads for like in the long tail, not getting too esoteric about this, I can just say, okay, you know what, we're not going to worry about that. We're going to kind of let that automate itself to some degree, focus on the things that matter, and move on to the next big project.
For us, the way the landscape is changing is pretty much everything we do. So my team is expected to know what global trends are happening and then understand how that's going to impact our customers of today, but also how can we anticipate the needs of what they're going to have in the future that they don't even know about yet. So I would say it's completely wrapped up, and I could go and monologue about it, I'll try not to. But I mentioned before that our competitors, and I mentioned a couple of the big banks, but the reality is when we are talking about the landscape, we're actually not usually talking about those big banks. Yes, we're interested in some things that are happening, what we can learn from them, and tracking share, things like that. But the fintechs, the startups, and big tech firms like Apple and Google and Amazon, that's really where we are focused today. And it's not that we're focused on one group and not the other two, but really, if we want to be around for the next 200 years, which Citi's a 200-year-old company, then we're not going to be able to do business in traditional banking the way we do today. So we know that. We are not resting on our laurels, just expecting that a huge brand name and an old company and 300,000 people are going to keep going. So I love that because I think that's sort of that competitive spirit, and how do we really take it seriously, and we're not just saying, oh, it's a startup, they only have 300,000 users or something like that. It's about what can we learn from point solutions, and what can we learn from how this is ultimately going to affect how we need to think about going to market with our customers.
I think an observation that we have on the hiring landscape, recruitment, just careers, the software and the experiences and platforms that are built around that, built around those critical elements of life are pretty outdated and old school. Like it feels like the HR space, or HR tech specifically, was one of the last to really have like this revolution of startups, and presumably because it's not the sexiest down space. It was sexy to us.
Each his own.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, definitely historically less investment, but we are students in this game, certainly, but what we're finding that's fascinating, not just as it pertains to people of color, but in general with recruitment, is the extent to which through AI and machine learning, you can be servicing jobs or roles or opportunities, etc., to individuals that they never would have raised their hands for without even understanding why they're a fit, frankly, or them suggesting that they would be interested. And the extent to which that's changing the recruitment process and changing internal mobility, certainly for people who historically have not had a seat at the table, but also just more broadly in the landscape, has been fascinating. Companies doing away with interviews altogether, companies moving to video interviews, companies doing away with resume screens, companies doing gamified assessments where you literally play with basically these kind of modules that test various elements of your competencies on a cognitive level and then recommend careers or specific jobs to you. It's a remarkable time to be in that space, and so that's been really encouraging to see because it's directly helping to lift the community that we're serving.
I'm going to skip around here because you're just feeding into something of like what constitutes success in your business, or what story of success are you most proud of? Specifically, you just have a very interesting use case amongst the panelists up here.
So you prompted us earlier to just sort of introduce the size of our business into the conversation. So I'll reflect back on, we went through an accelerator program called Y Combinator, which is sort of an incubator for startups and connects you to the Silicon Valley ecosystem. One sort of piece of motivation, success story, early win that we celebrated was, it was the 9 of us working for the company, living together in a house. It was like the show Silicon Valley, if you've watched it. That show is like, gives me PTSD. But we were living together in this house, and we had a candidate who was a first-generation college student. Both of her parents were from West Africa. She lived with her mother in New York City. She somehow sort of, clawed and scraped her way to Princeton, but had no exposure to the technology industry. And a company who we were partnered with at the time, I think it was Square, had an opportunity for sort of an internship for graduates. She truly had no background, was like a guitarist, might have been a music major at Princeton. But she found through our platform this job at Square, this internship, which became a job. And then she came to our house with cookies for the team. So that, I guess selfishly, that was a huge win that we celebrated, because it was a true perk. But I think what that represented for us was it brought what is this digital experience, and we have tens of thousands of candidates connecting with opportunities, into a very personalized story of one person who came to our home and gave us cookies and told us how she was imagining the future generations, or like her parents cried when she got the job offer, and now she's imagining how her kids' lives will be different. So I think for us, it's really about thinking about the multi-generational economic impact that hopefully can have ripple effects for communities.
Rachel, what does success look like for you?
At work, I would say the past couple years, success has been about launching into market. So how many features, how many experiences, what types of experience, how fast can we do it, how can we take traditional development cycles that are 40 months and shrink it down to 9 months. Things like this were really, really big when I first started, and no one believed that we were going to launch the first MVP we did, which is minimal viable product, at the end of 2016, and we did, and then everyone's like, oh geez, this team is still going, I guess we'll keep investing in them. So that was big, but now I think we've actually started pivoting to a place where success sometimes looks like what we're not going to release. And I say that because it means that we are actually testing things earlier with less resources, fewer dollars, less money in market, and it means that we are going to save from scaled decisions that will ultimately not work out. So I love the fact that now we can get into market faster, do smaller controlled tests, like the Canvas community, which is our beta community. We do many tests. Every single day there's some sort of test going on, which just means that we can save from failures. We can fail earlier rather than that. There was one case last year where we talked about launching a sub-brand, or rather than going with the master brand, and there was a calculation that it would have been over $200 million extra if we had chosen to go with the other brand. So something like that, where you can use research and data to make a decision, has been really powerful. It's something that's successful and rewarding for the team.
So we're always looking at numbers, and that's our guiding force. I'm like, okay, great. And actually, the number story has been really interesting. I think when we sold our first we had a second brand, Lumen Leaf, and just kind of all of a sudden you see on your phone that people are actually buying this thing. You're like, really? But I think, actually, to be honest, has been, just for me personally, the way we built our team. My personal, probably 15 or 20 people I've hired, I think one has left. A couple have started off as interns who are now vice presidents. I think we've done just an amazing job of finding great people, and finding them in crazy ways. And I actually didn't say this, but I met one at a bachelor party. Apparently he was really great at paid search, and I kept on him, and next thing you know, Mike's our VP of paid marketing. But really, I think the talent retention, creating a workplace where people want to stay, where they feel it's a meritocracy, where you're inspiring them, where they know that you have their back, and that your loyalty to them is beyond just one conversation. It's that you really truly deeply get where they want to go in their careers, and you're there for them. I think has been probably my most rewarding thing doing this.
So in offering what you want to offer, let me start over. When determining what you want to offer customers, mattress space, direct to consumer, you could expand into other parts, complementary parts of the business. How do you determine what you guys offer your customers? I mean, you're probably very, very heavy data analytics driven, but what other factors come into play?
I think there's a brand fit first off, so you have to create filters. So, we have certain things that we're not going to do, and then we have certain things we will do. We really do have a data-driven approach. There are things that we can upsell to our current customer base. So we want to create in general, we want to create a higher lifetime average value of customer. That's a goal for us. So when you buy our mattress, we want you to buy our sheets, we want you to buy our pillows, we want you to buy our pillow spray. That's all stuff that we've started to do, we will do. We also want to have the broadest possible reach in terms of product. So we want to be in every mattress vertical we possibly can. We want to then, I think another thing is we've become a little channel agnostic as time has gone on, which means, digital isn't our only thing. So we're actually launching about 20 stores in the next 2 years, which I'll be sort of managing and running, and that's also built on a lot of data. So data guides, data guides a lot of our decision making. We have our filters. As long as you're brand authentic, as long as you're, it makes sense. We're not just doing something for a quick buck. We're really adding to the long-term value and sustainability of the company. That's how we do it.
How many brick and mortar stores do you have now?
0. Our first one's launching in New York City at 57th and 3rd at the end of August.
And is it more of a showroom or?
So the digital, it's kind of interesting. We have a almost like a digital type of approach towards retail. So if you go to Easton, you'll see there are actually a lot of digitally native brands now. So you'll see like Peloton's there, Indochino, Shinola, a ton of them. And so it's kind of similar. So it's almost like an omni-channel type of approach. I'm getting, sorry.
We're getting really
getting a little too deep in this. We're just, we're efficient. We don't carry a lot of inventory. We're really transparent with the customer. You buy off an iPad, things like that.
What was the deciding point to say, you know what, I'm going to open brick and mortar?
At the end of the day, we realized that the same way that we're really efficient online, we can be really efficient offline, and there are just certain places that just make a lot of sense. Also, just, we're not the first ones to do this. Other companies kind of similar to ours that have launched a brick and mortar store have also seen their e-commerce sales go up because you essentially create sort of a brand identity and word of mouth within that specific market. So there were a number of really nerdy reasons to do this.
We'll talk later.
I won't get into. I didn't already too much.
So what we decide to offer to our customers, a lot of it's already out there. We offer hundreds of different products, but when we are launching new products and features, everything is co-created with our customers. So when I say co-created, what it means is we are involving our customers or our potential customers in the entire product development process. So from the point where we have an idea or we say we think that we might have something there or we wonder if anyone's interested in this at all, we will start to float that concept in front of people. And a lot of it's digital, is how we do it. So we have different communities, 18 different communities that we manage that allow us to connect with our customers pretty much 24/7. Unfortunately, 24/7 sometimes means that people don't realize that they're sitting in their bed having a conversation with someone in company headquarters or something like this. But regardless, we have the opportunity to really go out and connect with our customers and understand what they need, what they want, what's not working well, and then what we should start to deliver. So we create prototypes, we have lo-fi prototypes, we have working prototypes, we have a whole prototyping team, and then we are taking those sample experiences, putting them in front of people and asking them for honest feedback to try to understand how we can optimize that. We will go through that process, the entire journey, from when we say, what should we do? What is the problem? How should we go about solving it? What should it look like? And then did it work? So every single one of those stages, we have the luxury of being able to interact with a lot of customers. So since 2016, we have co-created with 72,000 customers, which means that's around 140 people per day. And it's really great because what it means is when people, executives, have personal points of view and say, I really think we should do this campaign and we should do it all on Yahoo. And everyone's sort of like, oh my gosh, no, why would we do that? Then we can actually just get some data and talk to where people are. We can understand what people's different usages, their perceptions, their reactions, and take that conversation from a personal point of view to something that's much more data-based and neutral, and we then get to present it in a way that feels very objective to help make the decision. So we try to represent the customer in that experience so that by the time we do go to market, we are actually creating and spending time on things people need and want, and not on things that some random person decided they needed or wanted and no one else needed.
How many people are on your team, Rachel, and that are touching all these aspects of testing and customer touch points? And it seems like a lot.
It depends. We have the internal direct team that like direct reporting. We also have a couple of different agencies, about 10 different agencies, and software partners that we use. So we rely on a lot of different software partners to help us execute. So probably between all the teams, it's maybe 80 to 100, and then the broader design team's another 150 or so globally.
All right, Mr. You down there.
I think on our end, it's been interesting seeing the evolution of how we choose what products and offerings to build. The initial impetus for starting the company was, we've had this very specific experience as black males working in a industry that doesn't look like us. So we thought at the time, all of our intuition and experiences, we'll just build exactly that. We'll build what we would be consumers of that doesn't exist. And that worked initially, and that sort of like got some initial traction and found people who had backgrounds similar to ours, although we didn't really acknowledge this at the time. But then as we grew, we recognized very quickly that the intersectionality of the different stakeholders who would need to be our customers or our candidates on our platform if our business were to grow. And we started having to do a process that was a lot more agile and involved the actual candidates or sample candidates in the design process. So we used the Google Design Sprint methodology to sit down, starting with like a core problem that you're working towards, and then in a week having an actual working prototype out to market and sort of iterating, and finally building what the customer is telling you and actually is wanting, as opposed to what we think, because we would be customers, we would want. And I think a good manifestation of why that agility, bringing it back again to being a small startup, we're a team of about 50, why that agility is critical is, without naming them, the most obvious, recruitment platform that's out there, professional network, 600 million people on their platform, and yet they're a customer of ours. And I think that's a pretty compelling case study for our ability to move very quickly in building something that our unique customers, stakeholders want, is why they need to come to us instead of the other way around.
So what's your balance between the other tech platforms, the companies in which you're connecting candidates for, and the candidates themselves? What's the balance and decisions there for what you guys produce?
Tricky question. We had a board meeting on Monday and they asked the same question. No, I think it's a constant balancing act. At the beginning, we tried to seesaw. We'll start with the candidate experience. We'll build something that's great for the job seeker, and if it engages them, we'll swing the pendulum back and start building out a platform for companies. I think over time we realized that we had to actually be addressing all of the needs simultaneously, and our guiding principles are really just the core values of the business. So we have, principles that the candidates are our family. To treat them like a family, to love every user is literally a value of our business. And we started focusing more of our attention rather on the candidates and the experience that they'll have as the guiding principle, while still, of course, building out for our companies, recognizing that would sort of move the bottom line and create engaged and happy users.
So, what are the daily challenges, the toughest part of your day? I mean, you all are very, this is gonna be a good one. Let's just buckle in. All right, go.
I think, again, sort of catering it to the stage of the business, I think the hardest thing for us, and I'm speaking for my co-founder and myself, perhaps as a nudge to him, because I think he's also, struggles with this, we have a hard time giving up things that we have owned to new stakeholders. So when you're 2 people in a WeWork space and then growing to 50 people, soon to be 60 people, the degree of delegation becomes intense. But effectively, we try to remind ourselves every day, the goal is to own something until we have to fire ourselves and replace ourselves with somebody who can do it better than us. And so I think what I struggle most with is giving up, the company, it feels like my baby, but the little elements of the company that I dedicate all of my time and energy in, and nights and weekends for 6 months. And then, frankly, somebody needs to kind of outgrow my abilities. That, I think, is the single thing that I find most challenging, knowing when it's right to say, we should bring others in to own this and to kind of run with it from here.
I think for us it's speed. The challenge for me, I love doing things fast and moving quickly and just taking action on things rather than belaboring and doing like the analysis paralysis stuff. I don't know why, because it doesn't, probably for my family, they probably are surprised by that. But in general, we have the ability to move really fast in our team, in our unit, which is the FinTech unit, and it is comprised of people who are sort of challengers and want to do things differently and not follow the same processes that we've always followed and skip the committees and try to get around the decisions and things like that. So we try to move really fast, but we're still a company of 300,000 people, and so a lot of times the analogy that's used is the speedboat pulling the Queen Mary, and we can move really fast within ourselves, but it would be completely ridiculous to think that we wouldn't be able to work with the rest of the bank to be able to get what we want executed. So there's so many different things, including governance and risk and info security and compliance and legal, and I mean, all of these teams are not motivated to move quickly. These teams are motivated to like analyze and look at every word and take 3 months to make a document, to revise a privacy policy, and then you ask them to do it again. They're like, oh, I'm a little lazy, I might just retire before that happens. So, I mean, we're really at odds with people in terms of the speed, and so it's about kind of bringing people along and making them feel the energy of it and trying to not step on their toes too much while we're trying to actually move a lot more quickly.
For us, it's actually been, so I couldn't sort of relate more to both those areas. I think as a founder, you end up in situations where you really do have to give up things. You can't create this huge company with 4 people. And it was a lot of fun having 4 or 5 or 10 people, but you get to a level where you just really have to let everyone get in their own swim lane and run. And also, part of the frustration with other people is they might be slower than you used to be, and you used to not have to ask for permission, and now permission is probably important as part of a process that now we also have. But so I think that's just that's a reality almost everywhere. Competition has been something that we've really had to face a lot of. We were the first ones in this space. Luckily we're different from others in our category, so we're distinct. We're not a mattress in a box. If you know our space very well, we're in-home installation and removal. It allows us to have a different type of product, but sometimes articulating that to the consumer has been tough, particularly when a new brand will come up with nothing to lose and just sort of start maybe just saying things that might not necessarily be true. So I think just having to have like almost a marathon pace, be above the fray, really just pitch your value proposition, be the strongest and most confident guys in the room who really aren't willing to kind of be to dive into that deep mess. I think has been an interesting lesson. It's been frustrating at times, but I'm really happy where we are today.
Ricky, as you guys are continuing to grow and opening brick and mortar, are you guys able to remain as nimble as you once were?
Yeah, so I think nimbleness is definitely a huge thing. So I think that my philosophy has been kind of going to be distilled to a few different things. One, 80-20 rule has been something that I've sort of followed from the beginning. 20% of the effort for 80% of the results. Anything sort of too far above that, you end up being a little too focused on perfection, and you don't get on to the next project, what might be 10 times bigger than the previous project. Testing and experimentation. What I love about today is everything can be tested. That wasn't the case, 10, 20, 30 years ago. So there was a lot of intuition-based decision-making, 30 years ago. Now we have the benefit of a lot of data, a lot of information that we then get to make decisions off of. And as you know what, sometimes the tests aren't even constructed the right way. So it's not like intuition isn't even part of this. I remember there was one test that was performed by one of our engineers, and I'm just like, oh my God, well, the test was designed to lose. So sometimes you have to walk in and make sure those things, the tests are constructed the right way, but at least we have that type of data today. What's the question again?
If you were able to remain nimble as you guys grow.
So I think as we've gotten bigger, we really, I think you have to kind of continue to advocate for a certain type of approach. You bring that approach to meetings. You hope that the people that you bring on, I think it really does come down to people eventually. You really hope the people that come on understand sort of the way that you'd like to do things, and I think that's how you stay nimble. You bring on people who understand what being nimble means.
I don't know how nimble you can be with all of your compliance and speed and everything, but
I think there's a lot of gray area, and you have to understand the gray area, and also what we've found is the more we understand the actual policies, like really reading the policies so that we can then challenge the policies better. It's almost like being a lawyer without being a lawyer. So we are trying to understand the contracts and everything that's happening so that we can then push back and say, well, that's actually not what they said, or can we do it this way? Or a lot of times it's around global, frankly. So we have a vendor, a partner we want to work with, and we only have a master service agreement to work with them in one area or one way, and we want to use it a different way, and it's going to be an 8-month process to try to get them approved for a different way, and the whole thing just becomes this really complex and time-consuming process. So we try to meet them with knowledge.
You were talking about global trends earlier in banking. Is there anything that would surprise us in global trends that have not hit the US?
Oh, well, APAC is so far ahead. I mean, that's the biggest thing that we talk about. So we have 18 markets in APAC and EMEA, and Singapore and Hong Kong and India and all of those countries are just so far ahead in terms of digital. And they're not necessarily ahead in terms of how they're doing digital and being customer-centric and using customer needs and customer perceptions to be able to make the decisions. They're still very top-down and pretty hierarchical offices, but the way that the life in APAC is currently cashless, and how they're using technology is just far beyond where we are in the US. I mean, we're probably, I think, 10th or 11th in terms of cashless societies. Sweden's #1, and we are so far from being a cashless society compared to some of these other markets. So the other markets, like in APAC, have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder because they don't want the people from the headquarters in New York to just come in and tell them what to do and think that they know everything. And we have to over-index on that a bit to make sure that we are really learning from them, because they are further ahead in some ways. Mexico is the other market where we have a huge presence, and they are in completely different worlds. So Mexico, they are still just trying to get people to use mobile and not go into branches to check their balances and things like that. They are so much more basic in terms of their financial needs. So it's a little bit tough sometimes to try to find those common points of intersection across the different markets, but usually US and APAC are closer together, and we try to work together and not do things multiple times, but do it in a way where we're learning from each other and building different parts of an experience, and then only having to refactor a little bit to tailor to the individual market, rather than if you build an entire set of code in the US and then you say, okay, well now APAC's going to build their own mobile app, and they're going to build all these same features with all the same set of cost and level of effort. It's really wasteful to be a global company like that. So it doesn't make for very fun evenings and early mornings, like last night when I had to be on a call at 9:45. But it is cool and good to be able to have that type of lens on what we're doing.
And Ryan, what would surprise us about your job in your industry? Drop some knowledge bombs that will take us back.
Great, yeah, thanks. No pressure. Well, no, I think this, I don't know if this would surprise this audience, just given the relative differences in size of companies, but one thing that I find that's funny, often when talking about like being a startup, and now that we have funding and have users and have grown, we have a team, people ask, like, do you have an office? Like, for some reason that's like a moment for them, like, wow, it's real. So as a startup with an office, I think one of the things that surprises people is that like how many things are still broken completely, and fire drills and chaos. And I think, and I think each time like it's a new round of funding or a new milestone as a business that we achieve, we think like, okay, cool, like now it's going to slow down. Now it's like we're that next thing. We have like a bigger office or whatever whatever that milestone might be. But I think the realization that like things are always broken on fire, and when it really hit home for me was when Brian Chesky, who's the CEO of Airbnb, they were a Y Combinator company, so we had the privilege of meeting him and Joe Gebbia, his co-founder, and for lunch we were chatting with him about their business and saying like, gosh, like there's so many things we want to learn from you about where you are and like, you know, how do you do it? What are your tips of the trade? And he was like, everything's on fire all the time. This is crazy scary. We have no idea what we're doing. And so I think that's what made me realize, one, maybe to like buckle up and go at a marathon pace, not a sprint, because this is just my life now, apparently. But I think that surprises people. The idea of like we're still just putting out fires, plugging holes. We have this very leaky bucket where it's just a constant action of plugging holes as new holes form, and growing and learning that way. So I guess that's the fun part.
Everything's on fire. That is a good take.
It's funny that they ask you if you have an office, because the question that I get asked is, when is the last time you laughed at work? Which is so sad that people think that we're that joyless of an industry. But yeah, no, we actually have a lot of fun at work, and I get pretty much all my social interaction that I need there, which is nice.
In addition to your 9:45 calls with global companies, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's when you're on mute and you're texting with your coworkers about what's happening, and that part you can laugh about.
Thank God for mute.
Yeah, I was not on mute last week while working on a call, and I had the team texting and saying, "You're not on mute. You're not on mute."
It's kind of like you didn't do your homework in high school. That's the new version. You're accidentally not on mute.
You can answer that one. What's the most surprising thing about your job and your position? Is everything on fire in the mattress business too?
It's
Other than the mattresses?
Yeah, all the mattresses are on fire all over the
That would be a
country.
problem.
That would be a problem. We've never had a literal fire drill that big. I think what's surprising is just at the end of the day, the mattress. I think when I talk to my mom, she thinks that like. She's like, so tell me about the inch in height of that one mattress that, I'm like, Mom, you think like I look and sleep on every single one of our beds? No, we have a huge company that does all sorts of different things with people doing all sorts of, and they're specialized in these very different ways, and we're not all just like at the mattress store talking to people. So I think that's surprising, I think, for others. What's been surprising for me has just been, actually, to be honest, we started off really, really, in a small way. We bootstrapped to where we are. We had our first big round of funding was actually this past year. And just the way the company has evolved from a really like an internet marketing type of company into a brand that's actually going to go into physical retail. I think it's been just such an interesting ride to watch, and weirdly kind of has felt unnatural and natural at the same time.
All right, I'm getting the 5-minute warning before we move to questions, so I'm going to ask the final one, knowing that we'll probably take a hot minute on this one. Looking back, what advice would you give your younger self in your career path?
Not to fail 10 times, like 3 or 4 is pretty good. I think that, like I would say what I kind of was saying earlier, there's just so much out there that you can piggyback off and leverage. I remember when we were first starting, there was this random, I think it was actually a Y Combinator piece where they published like 300 tools you could use. And I mean, it was like my birthday for 100 years. Like, just whoa! I've been wasting so much time. Like the most productive 3 weeks of my life happened after I got that email. So there's just so much you can use that's out there. You don't have to build the world yourself. There's just the world's changed that way.
Yeah, there's no need to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
So I would say the advice I'd probably give myself is to not try to plan what the future is going to be, and I think that it's hard for me because I like to know what's happening and plan. Like I pack for a trip 2 weeks in advance, things like this. But in general, it's sort of been the spirit of just embracing what challenges might come my way or what opportunities happen when I feel like I'm starting to stagnate, and I think that's when I have made the moves that I have in order to keep learning and growing. The other thing I would say too is if I were specifically talking to myself and not the broader group, I would give myself the advice that I should have worked abroad earlier in my career, because now I have 2 little kids, and I think it's pretty difficult to imagine us uprooting and moving outside of the US at this point.
I think I probably would have told myself to take things a little bit less seriously, or like to not take myself too seriously, but I'll make it personal. And I think that really hit home for me a couple times. Once was like early on building the startup and speaking to, I forget who, I should remember who this was. This was sort of a turning point for me. I was talking about being stressed out, building a business and working these long hours and wasn't sure if we were going to fail, et cetera. And I was like, yeah, I'm just so stressed. Like, and someone, I forget again, I wish I remember who it was. Someone was like, you're not a doctor. Like, what are the stakes here? If you fail, okay. Like, and in this setting, also not a teacher, right? Like, with high stakes. Which I thought for me was like this incredible realization of like, it's not actually the end of the world to fail at something or for it to not work. And so I think I started taking myself a little bit less seriously, and then by extension, it made it a lot easier to kind of go with the flow, take major risks.
So you're not a doctor and everything's on fire.
Right, yeah. So don't come to me for anything, I'm not a doctor.
I've learned a
One
lot.
thing I will say is we always say we're not saving lives, but we are changing them. So that way you still can feel like you're making a difference.
Yeah, very PR, I love it. Okay, we have like 5 minutes for questions, and I know we have a very inquisitive group here. So who's going to be first? I shall come out to the crowd.
Definitely my mom.
Katie Rankert, or I don't know your name. I can't say your name, married last name. It's complicated.
It's very complicated. Hi guys. I'll just sit, this is fine. So my question is primarily for Ricky. So I work in the retail automotive industry, and it's extremely antiquated in a lot of ways, but there are some major disruptors coming into our industry right now, like Carvana, where you can order a car online and have it delivered to your house. Don't do it, go to Riker. But we're looking at which ways we can kind of break into that. So as somebody who was a disruptor, is a disruptor in an industry where people usually go and lay on a mattress and like to see how it feels, what advice would you give to somebody who's trying to disrupt an industry?
Any of you, really.
Yeah, I think, without getting too much into like super detailed stuff, I think, really comes down to converting customer, as you know, and it comes down to acquiring a customer and then reselling to a customer. So, how do you make that as seamless as possible? So are there digital ways to bring someone who's bought a car from you to upsell them over a period of time, I think is a way to increase revenue. In terms of acquiring a customer, and obviously I'm sure you've thought through a number of ways to do that, and then converting a customer, how do you make it so the transaction happens as easy as possible, so it doesn't take a week or two to cross shop, and it doesn't take 4 or 5 hours to sit there, and maybe they'll come back, and maybe it's at 9 p.m. at night. I don't know, it's not my industry, but I'm sure those are the kind of 3 things I always focus on: conversion, acquisition, and retention.
And I believe the record company just got top place to work. Yes, so that's always great. They have good people and a good reputation, so that definitely helps. Or versus Doc, I'm always plugging you. All right. Oh, we got a question back here.
Hi, Morgan Harper, class of 2001. So my question actually goes for Ryan, and I'm wondering about which types of companies are very excited about job well services. Is it mostly a coastal thing? Are there a lot of Midwestern companies that are taking up on how to diversify their pipeline of candidates?
I appreciate the question. Quickly to Katie, this maybe is less relevant for your specific space, but just in terms of like disrupting, I think what people find surprising, like we left Goldman on like a Tuesday, put suits on for the first time, and came back to them on a Thursday, and just because we were a startup solving something, they're like, oh, startup, innovation, like, we'll do this. So I think it's funny the degree to which, again, maybe not relevant in this case, given the industry is established, but the extent to which just putting like the startup and data and innovation hat on things suddenly resonates with legacy folks. In terms of like where our presence is, our candidate population pretty much mirrors that where diverse talent is congregated in the country. So it largely reflects, yes, the coasts, We probably over-index Silicon Valley just because there aren't, unfortunately, too many people of color there, but there are lots of opportunities and exciting roles there. But we certainly have jobs and employers all throughout the country who are looking to diversify. And so I guess the commonality of the companies that we work with is they're not doing this for the feel-good PR checkbox. They're doing it because from the C-suite down, they fundamentally believe that they'll have a difficult time competing and that they'll be out-innovated if they don't treat diversity like any other investment they would make across their business. And so as long as you check, and we've said no to companies certainly, large companies that would have been accretive certainly to our revenue, but where it didn't make sense because they had the wrong motivations. Geographically, if you're in the US, as long as you, again, want diversity to be part of moving the bottom line and moving your company forward, we'll partner and we have candidates who'd be excited to work there.
Good question, good answer. I think we have time for like one, maybe two more. Oh, we got one over here.
Hi, I'm Dave Inglis, class of 1961. And I would direct this to Rachel. I'm a veteran of the banking industry, and I had a gentleman in my class by the name of John McCoy that went from City National Bank to JP Morgan Chase. What nations are the most sophisticated in banking in the world?
It's probably US, UK, and Germany. And UK has been pretty interesting lately. There have been a lot of challenger banks there, and the challenger banks in the UK have actually gotten about 30% of the retail deposits. So not just the interest, not just the kind of the cachet of the names, but they're actually starting to make a lot of traction. And then those challenger banks are getting licenses in other nations, including the US. So I think they're doing some pretty great stuff there.
Oh, Chelsea.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Vic Thorne. I'm class of 92. I have 2 young students here, and I'm a trustee and very proud to see the group here, and I'm totally amazed by not just your experiences and accomplishments, but everything that you've had to say, just really beautiful. I have a question. You're young alums, and you've achieved so much, and we've talked a lot about some really remarkable things, but you have a long road ahead of you. So what's your future look like, and where do you see your personal development and success for you personally?
Just to be short because everything's on fire.
And you have 1 minute to answer the question.
No, I think I will acknowledge that from like a personal fulfillment perspective or a business fulfillment perspective, it feels like it's a treadmill because the things that you're working towards, once you get there, there's like no party, no celebration. It's just like, cool, here's this next thing. And so I think, especially being in New York, and I'm sure this resonates with you, that can be a little bit dangerous. It feels like a treadmill on 15% incline. But I think for us, it's just, if we can keep bringing it back to the story I mentioned earlier and to the individual experiences and stories, we're totally happy with any level of like quote unquote success as a business that we achieve. And we're trying to focus less on what is the end outcome, what is like the next thing, and kind of just enjoy the ride, as cliche as that might be, because I think otherwise it's quick to get lost and sort of always want to set these kind of new goals as a business and person. At least that's my philosophy.
I think for work-wise and at Citi right now, I would love to see us actually reinvent what banking is and what it looks like, and in the next couple of years launch something that is completely competitive but also has our differentiating factors that are coming to the forefront, which is global scale and massive customer base already and people who understand the industry and things like that. I still think that there's a lot that can be done and a lot that we need to do to stand out and kind of win in the space that's still very much in a changing time. I think personally, it's hard to say what I think the road ahead it looks like. I am trying to continue to as long as I'm working for someone who I respect and who I think is really smart and that I'm learning from, I think that's what matters to me personally. And when that's not the case, then that's when I will reevaluate. But in terms of industries, I also think it's really fascinating what's going to happen in healthcare and what's already started to happen, because retail was about 10 years ago and the changes with that, and hospitality had big changes. There's so many different industries that have been changing. Financial services very much now, but healthcare I think will be the next big one that will completely change for the better.
I actually switched my role, like I think I mentioned before, about 5 months ago, just because I'd been doing and running, marketing from our inception, from the first, Google and Facebook accounts all the way up to where we were about 6 months ago. And just wanted to switch just because I thought, the fun part of the business would be I just wanted to try a new challenge. So I thought product would be interesting. I thought retail store strategy would be interesting. I thought international expansion would be interesting. So I switched my job. And I got to be a nerd about totally different things. And I actually, it's kind of weird. I do end up sneakily coming back and playing CMO. Just having secret side meetings by the water cooler. So just tell me how, this past weekend on the new launch, how much should we spend, blah, blah, blah. I still do that a little bit, and I try not to do too much of it. But, so I have switched a little bit. Quite frankly, I love doing this, and I kind of want to do it again. And if this company ends up, and I end up leaving at some point, I can't wait to go back into an incubator and fire away again. I love that time of life, and I think it's exciting.
Thank you all for your questions. That was amazing. I think I'm supposed to turn it over to Lauren now.
Yeah, can we just give them a round of applause? I want to personally thank everybody who came to sit in our panel. We had a lot of people travel, and we weren't sure as a board if we could make that happen, given this was only our third year. And every single panelist said yes. So that was really cool, and we're really thankful. So thank you. I will say Ryan disclosed that he's going to the Derby, so he had ulterior motives to come back to the Midwest. So I want to take a minute to also thank Sheila Troutner from the class of 1998 and Mike Gross from the class of 1989 for providing refreshments for this evening, as well as Elizabeth Fox, who from the class of 2006, who provided the beautiful flowers. Thank you very much for contributing to tonight's event. And this concludes the event. Thank you all for coming.